It is a reality. I mean, you might not see it around Green Bay, but it is there. Like, no guy's gonna just lay on the corner of a street and sleep to show homelessness. No, they try to hide. Like, I've seen people sleep behind the Boys and Girls Club, but they're not gonna sleep right in public to make themselves look like bums. Like, you don't see it like that. So if you do think that there's not a homelessness issue in Green Bay, it's not gonna just be obvious. You actually have to search for it.
Homelessness is in Brown County for sure, and it's in Howard Suamico School District, which many people aren't aware of. They always think it's in the city of Green Bay, but it's definitely in the outlying areas too. Last school year, we had 74 students that were identified as homeless, and this year we have a lot already, and the number keeps growing. Because of the weather, that is why doubling up is more common in this area than any other type of homelessness. But I do have families that are living in cars. I have families that are living in hotels, and families that are traveling not knowing where they're going.
Well, I think one of the keys to ending generational poverty is that of working with the children. What we don't appreciate or think of enough is that people who live in poverty are experiencing trauma. Poverty is trauma, in particular for children. And what we are learning more and more through neuroscience is the impact that trauma has on brain development of young children in particular. So it's really important for children those younger years that they receive the emotional and the social, the cognitive development that's really important for their brains to fully develop. And when that is absent, that's something that's very hard to recover from, very hard to overcome.
We're like the fourth highest in the state. So it's Milwaukee, either Madison or Racine, and then Green Bay with the highest numbers. But for us, at-risk students too, they have a home, but they're at risk for being successful in school and life for a lot of different reasons, poverty being one of them. And so since our numbers at our school are almost 80%, so if I have 1,000 students, 800 of my students are at risk. And when you start saying things like that, that changes it. Our elementary schools are 99%. We have to talk about it. I think when you start talking about poverty, it becomes emotionally charged. How do we get these conversations going so we really can change things? Do you understand that this child, when they walk into this classroom, has not, had a place to sleep, or is sleeping in a car, or is doubled up on a couch? I remember one student, she didn't want to talk because she hadn't had the ability to brush her teeth because she was doubled up in a situation, and those things just didn't happen, but she came to school anyway. And how many times are we hammering these kids about what they're not doing? If we can understand what their reality is and really walk a mile in their shoes, we could change it, change the situation. It's like a dark secret nobody wants to think about. I think sometimes it's better if it's, oh, that's over there, different from me. And my worlds are colliding right now. The resources my children have compared to what my students have, it's different. So she has all the books, and this person didn't grow up with any books. How do we fix that? And how do we say that out loud and start making changes? If we have at-risk students, why aren't we feeding them? Our students have kids or siblings. Where's the daycare? Our kids don't have transportation. Where's the transportation? All right, you want them to be better and do well, but you don't want to provide the resources to make that possible. I need my community understanding that we need services, and that drop the pull yourself up by your bootstraps kind of thing, so that we can make a difference in these kids' lives. a boy that I worked with for 4 years at West, who also got into college. He had to go through a Take Advantage program. If he jumped through this hoop, he was going to be enrolled in their college. He's a homeless and unaccompanied student. And what was standing in his way was the fact that no one would take him. He did not have a ride to school and someone to move him in. One of the alternatives was going to be a Greyhound bus. I don't know about you, but I can't imagine putting a child of mine on a Greyhound bus and saying, see ya. I need the community to know that this child would end up in prison or dead if we don't get him into school. So where do you want to put your resources? Even if we get them through high school and we check through high school, what's the next step? How do we get them to navigate a world that is not their world? This is not their reality. And how do we teach things, teach skills, teach them, how to finance money, how to budget, how to do things that have never they've never had to do before. They've never had it, and if they've had it, it never lasts. So let's spend it over here, and people judge, we shame and blame, instead of really trying to understand what's going on so we can change things. And if we don't put the energy into education, we are going to pay for it over here in welfare costs, in prison systems, in everything that's negative. And these kids are great. They're just like anybody else's kids. They just right now don't have a home or don't have resources, and they got to figure it out.
We like to educate the high school students as to how to succeed in life. We do a lot of independent life skills for these students and how they can go on to school, how they can maintain a job, how they can try and support and worry about themselves. Because a lot of times they're more worried about their mom or their dad or their siblings than they are about themselves. So just educating the high school students as to how you can break that cycle.
You never know what kind of difference you're making for a child. At times is a time delay or a lag between what you do and experiencing the effects or the benefit of what you do. So maybe one of the best things we can do is create memories that later on, whether it's 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, 10 years down the road, that child will think back to some of the experiences they had in one of our EPH homes, and that will help take them out of that generational poverty. One of our partnership churches hosted a Halloween event for children within the neighborhood. One of the children who came in asked, well, what are you doing? What's going on? And the response was, well, we're making placemats for EPH children. And this teen said, I was an EPH kid. I was staying in a tent until EPH came along and provided us a home to stay in.
The day we moved out, my ex-girlfriend broke up with me when she found out we were homeless, so that kind of sucked. We actually moved in at night, so it was dark when we showed up, and so we were trying to put the tent up in the dark, and it didn't work too well. It wasn't really the best because it wasn't level, and we didn't have all the blankets or everything, so we had like one blanket and one pillow. That was pretty much it.
The first night, I didn't really understand. I was like, I wish I was back home where it's warm. I'm freezing. Because at first night, we only had one blanket and a pillow and a sleeping bag. And it was so cold that Matthew just gave up his blanket to give to me. Knowing that my family is cold and it's getting wet from the rain, I mean, I'd rather stand out in the rain than have my family wet. I would stand out anywhere and just freeze to know that my parents are somewhere warm. Being outside in the dark creeped me out really bad without my brother there. So I'd text him and he'd try and give me good words to make me feel all comforting.
Just watching all the other kids living their life in a house or having a nice life with both their parents just kind of made me frustrated, and it made me wonder what I did wrong to have to be put in that situation.
What I saw in my brother was pain. And the outside, he showed that, you know, he only tried to act all strong for me. I already know he was hurting inside. He was actually really depressed during the time because, you know, with all the trouble, he thought maybe the reason why we got kicked out from our original house was because of him. So he was blaming himself. And the only person that could get in his head that it isn't our fault, it's nobody's fault, was me. So it took a lot of encouragement to tell him that it's okay.
When we moved into the house, the best moment was opening my drawers and putting my clothes in it. Like, when we lived at the campground, we had a suitcase with our clothes in it, and the clothes would smell nasty after a while from just sitting in the suitcase.
We're all kind of one tragedy or one traumatic event away from possibly being homeless. I mean, I have families. I have a mom that I was talking to. Everything was great. And then something happened with her car and she wasn't able to get to work and she lost her job and she didn't have a savings. And so it was just kind of a domino effect from there. You know, here she was, never knew homelessness in her life. One event with a car. You know, I've had families that got thrown into poverty due to medical bills. For a lot of my homeless families, their support networks are also in poverty. They're also escaping homelessness. I have, you know, a mom that I'm working with who lost her housing, but she can't move in with her mom because her mom's also on housing and could lose her housing. So she doesn't have somebody she can go to who has their own place. A lot of her family is homeless or in poverty as well. So it's really hard to get out of that when it's kind of generational.
I think the answer to homelessness and poverty is, in general, two-pronged. I think on one hand, we have to meet people's needs today. We need to get basic needs resources to people immediately, and we need to have systems in place to do that. We also need to kind of go upstream, they say, and figure out why people are landing in these situations in the first place. In the Green Bay area, we have lack of affordable housing. So when people are hard on the luck or they don't have a lot of their income to put towards housing, there's just not a lot of options in our area for affordable housing. We need a living wage, so people who maybe have a GED, a high school diploma, or maybe not even that, can work hard and work 40 hours a week and be able to live on that.
If our community does buy into homelessness, and we do have more buy-in by the community for our homeless families, I feel that it would be a much more cohesive effort to get rid of homelessness. And I feel that a lot of our families here in our district would be able to maintain and sustain themselves in their own housing. It's just finding that housing, and it's just finding that one person that they can connect with outside of school. And I think that once that happens, our families will be able to be successful.
We're trying to deal with or address the issues that are really going to help them return and stay self-sufficient. For example, part one of the solutions is that of budget counseling. Another is setting them up with a primary care physician so that health issues can be dealt with both for the parent and for the children. Another is getting a parent back on track with an educational plan. We have some families who have started an educational plan but have had to give it up due to poverty-related issues. And also helping them return to employability or to employment. For the families who successfully go through our program, over 90% are able to stay self-sufficient over the period of the next few years. And when I say we, what I'm referring to is a very strong partnership. Partnership of 20 Green Bay area churches, a partnership with the Salvation Army that provides case management for us, works with our family, partnership with other social support agencies within our community, but most of all, the broad network of volunteers that we have throughout our partnership churches and throughout the community, and then also the financial support that we receive.
I think anything's possible. I think you can end homelessness. It's going to start with community leaders and social service agencies getting together and really acknowledging the problem. Sometimes in schools and communities, people feel if you don't talk about homelessness and other social problems that it doesn't exist, or if you do talk about it, it kind of taints your reputation. I think first of all, just acknowledging that there is a problem, there is something that we need to work on would go a long way in our community. I do think that with everyone working together, we have very committed people in our community. We have a good basis right now for social services. I think having the right leadership to pull all the resources together, to pull all the expertise together, there's so many different funding sources from the federal government and so on, that if our community could get together and really map this out and have a great plan for our families, I think we could do amazing things.
We need education on homelessness and how to live life outside of homelessness and how to move past it and break that cycle. But it's hard to get that education because when you're focused on your day-to-day basic living skills, like what are you going to eat, where are you going to sleep, you're not focused on education. So it's hard to balance that because you want to educate them, but they're not focused on educating. They don't want to be educated right now. They want to just know, where am I going to sleep tonight? And that's their immediate needs. So I guess what we need to do in our community is meet those basic needs so that we can educate these families and we can stop the cycle of homelessness.
Hard work goes a long way, but I don't think it gets people out of generational poverty. I mean, in this country, we're seeing a bigger divide between the haves and the have-nots, and a lot of the have-nots work hard. They just aren't able to make that leap in what's happening in society to get out of that system. So I definitely think education is what's important, and that's what I love about my job working with homeless students, is if we can just bit by bit problem solve or reduce the barriers to their education, I think we're actually doing something. Now, unfortunately, we can't measure that today, probably not even tomorrow, maybe not even in 20 years, but I firmly believe that going to a stable home at night so they can focus on education is going to open the doors for some students to maybe change the direction that their family members have lived in.
My job is to teach science, but at the end of the day, my job is to get them to start believing in who they are and that they can do this. And if they can pass this wicked science class, they can do anything.